We now have a pretty simple update function which grabs all of our user inputs, and then we can now use these values to calculate our tip outputs. So we're going to use these to perform some calculations and then update the user interface. For example, we need to output the value of our tip over on the right. We need to output the total. We need to also make sure that when we increase this tip value, that the percentage displays too. And also the same for the split values. So let's begin. I'm going to remove this console log from the last video, and then we can use these values to perform our calculations. The first one I'm going to grab is for the tip value. So how are we going to go about this? Well, for example, if the user enters a bill such as 100 and a tip value of 20%, we want to make sure the tip value in money is 20. So we have a bill value of 100, and the way we can do this is to multiply this value by the percentage of the tip, such as 20. You can see returned on the line below we have a value of 2000. This is because we need to divide the tip value by 100. So this now gives us the correct value just here. If this was 15%, this would give us the value of 15. So we can now use this over in our update function, and we can store this inside of a variable. We can call this the tip value, and we're going to set this equal to the same calculation we've just performed. So the 100 equivalent is the value of bill. So we'll say bill multiplied by our tip percent divided by 100. To make sure that the tip percent gets divided by 100 first, and then multiplied by the bill, we can wrap these inside the brackets to make sure the calculation gets performed correctly. Let's do a console log, and we can check this is all working fine. So the tip percent, refresh the browser. Let's go for the same calculation. So 100, we can select the tip value. And you can see if we move this all the way up, the updated values are now displayed. So now we have the total value of the tip. We can easily now work out how much the tip is per person. So let's create a new variable just below. Let's call this the tip each. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is to take the tip value, which we have just above, and then divide it by the number of people. This is available in the variable above called split. The next thing we can do right at the very bottom is to work out how much the total bill is per person. This again is going to be a pretty straightforward calculation. We currently have the total bill, which we're grabbing inside of this variable, and all we need to do is to divide it by the number of people. So a new variable, I'm going to call this the new bill each. So the first thing we need to do is to add the bill plus the total tip value. So this is going to give us the total bill we need to pay, which includes the tip, and then we can divide this by the number of people, which is available in the split. Just like above, we're going to wrap these inside the brackets to make sure the calculation gets performed in the correct order. So we'll add the values together and then multiply this by the number of people. So let's test this one out. We'll copy new bill each. Add this into our console log, and we can now test this out. So now if we add in the value of 100, we see an issue inside the console. We output in the value of 1000, which is an extra 0 added onto the end. Let's try one more. If we add 50, the same problem is happening with the value of 500. So the reason this is happening is probably not too clear at the moment. This is because we are actually receiving a data type of string rather than number from this bill input. We can check this by console logging the type of and then the value of our bill. Add anything into the input, and this is confirmed with the type of string. However though, the tip value, if we do this, reload, this is a type of number. So before, when we are outputting the value of new bill each, we are adding a string with a number. So what is actually happening when we add the bill to the tip value, rather than performing a number calculation, we're receiving 50 and then adding the 0 on the end, giving us the value of 500, which we're seeing in the console. The way we can get around this is to convert the value of bill into a number. So I'm going to cut this section where we grab the value and then make use of the JavaScript number function, passing back in the code which grabs our bill value. Now with this in place, we can now do a new console log with the type of bill, save and reload the browser, and we add anything into here which is now displayed as a number. Our value is now displayed as a number, so let's try once more the value of new bill each. Check this is all working okay. And we now see the value of 50 rather than 500. Okay, good. So now we have all the data which we need to work with. And the next step is to actually output these values into our user interface. We're going to do this in a similar way to just above where we grabbed the particular element, but rather than grabbing the element's value, we're going to be setting the value instead. So at the bottom of here, we can add a document.getElementById. So which ID do we want to grab for this particular element? Let's scroll up. There's our placeholder of 0%, which we can now remove. And this has the ID of tip%. So back down, we can add this in. And then to set the value of our element rather than our placeholder, we can use inner HTML. This inner HTML will set the value inside of our element, and we want this to be equivalent of our tip%. Save and reload. This is now working, and we can also add onto the end the percentage symbol. We can add this using the plus symbol, and then since we want to add a string value rather than a number, this is going to be added in quotations, and we should now see a percent symbol if we reload the browser and scroll across our range slider. Next up, we have this tip value just below, so let's scroll back up to our code. This is the element we want to target just here, and this has the ID of tip value. So just like here, we're also going to use document.getElementById, passing the ID of tip value, and again we'll set the inner HTML, and we already have this calculated just above in the value of tip value. Let's try this one, a bill of 50, and we can set the tip. And 10% of 50 is now equal to 5. So we're going to be using this a couple more times. So I'm going to copy this, paste this in just below. And the third one is going to be for the total value, which is a calculation of our bill being added to the tip value. So the ID for this section was total with tip, which we can see from our HTML just above. It was this section just here. And then we can add the HTML content with inner HTML, set this equal to our bill, being added to our tip value. Let's try this out. The bill of 50. And these two values added together give us the total of 55. So next we have the split section just below. The first thing we're going to go for is the value of the split, so one person. But now we're just going to set the number of people, such as 1, 2, 3, rather than outputting people or person just after. So let's start with this one. Get element by ID. The ID which we need for this one, if we scroll up to our split section, we can see next to our placeholder content, if we remove this, this is split value. And this is the value of our variable of split. Just after this, the next one we're going to grab is the total bill per person. The ID for this element in this section here is going to be bill each. And again, we also have this value stored inside the variable called new bill each. The last section we need to work with is the tip each down at the bottom. So let's again paste in our get element by ID. The span which we're updating has the ID of tip each. And we'll set the value to be the tip each variable, which we have stored above. So save this and back over to our project. add a bill. We know this is all working, so let's go for 10%. Since we only have one person, the bill each is 55, and they also pay the full tip of 5. Let's try upping this to be 2 people. The value is updated here, and this now updates our values just below. And this now leaves most of the functionality for our tip calculator now in place. Next, we're going to move on to add some formatting to the currency and also the split values.